Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and call this May 19th community workshop on our city commission workshop on a community redevelopment agency plan. It's a very exciting moment for any of you who have followed the saga of the CRA. Our first item is an approval of the agenda. I have no changes or amendments as the agenda was published. I have a motion to approve the agenda. I have a motion from Commissioner Clark, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Do I have any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And we would want to certainly recognize this moment tonight for Commissioner Coleman's live return to the dais. It was great to see him walk in. Woo! I told him he got a whole new wardrobe. Yeah. It looks good, yeah. Your wife has good taste.
Triple XL to XL.
All right. We have one item on our agenda tonight. We do not have our city attorney with us tonight. This is a workshop. Mike, did he pass on any message to us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The city attorney contacted me this afternoon. Just wanted to touch base about any perspectives that he could offer. We agreed that this was more of a public commission feedback, planning activity. And so we decided it'd probably be best if he did not attend. He had some other pressing matters to look into, so he won't be joining us tonight.
All right. And with that, I'm going to ask Brian to come on up. And I think there's one prevailing theme here tonight. He's going to go through the steps of the CRA and what step we're on. But let's all just remember that as we talk about all the different projects and things that could come out of the CRA, it doesn't mean that all these things will. There will be, limited funding in the CRA, and the CRA is 20 years, 30.
You're correct, Mr. Mayor. 20 years with
20
the potential for an additional 20-year extension if necessary.
So tonight we are called to put on our wizard caps and pull out the crystal balls and see what a commission 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now might want to do. If we miss it, and it doesn't get in the list tonight, then it's not in the list. We'd have to go through a whole round of negotiations with the BOCC to put it in the list. Just because it makes it into the list of things that we might spend tonight doesn't mean we're saying it will happen tonight, because I guarantee you there are going to be more things on the list than dollars that come out of the CRA. So I just want to, sometimes we get excited. Oh, I heard them. They're talking about doing this. They're talking about doing that. These are our wish list items we're going to throw into the list. And whatever you can think of, speak now or forever hold your peace. And that's kind of the mantra for tonight. With that, Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mayor Marlowe alluded, we've been working on this for quite some time. It predates me, which is 7.5 years. So I think it was probably a good 8 or 9 years before that. So it's been a good while, but we're on the cusp, and so it's exciting to get to the point where we can start talking about actual work program items to go into the work plan. We do have a crowd tonight, and so just for the benefit of folks who don't know what a CRA is, we'll go through it very quickly. A community redevelopment agency is a dependent special district in which the additional taxes derived for future increases in property values are set aside to support economic development in that district and only in that district. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. There's 3 basic steps, a lot of little sub-steps under them, but adopt the finding of necessity. The Commission adopted that finding of necessity by Resolution 2021-13 last Monday. Step 2 is development of the community redevelopment plan. That's where we're at tonight. And then once that's complete and we've gone through the process of negotiation with the county commission and everybody's in agreement of the elements of the plan, then we'll go to creating the economic development trust fund, or the redevelopment rather trust fund, which is basically where the money is deposited from those tax increment increases. So the basic responsibilities of the community redevelopment agency is responsible for devising the community redevelopment plan. Again, that's part of what we're working on tonight. As y'all remember, as part of the resolution last week, the City Commission is the redevelopment board for the CRA. Plan includes the overall goals of the redevelopment district, identifying the types of projects that you'd like to see in it, if funding's available. And as we'll talk just briefly about, the community redevelopment plan is funded through tax increment financing, which is basically, as the mayor said, you create a baseline year. In our case, we're asking for 2019. That's the baseline year, and you get an evaluation of the value of all the real estate in the community redevelopment district boundary at that time. From that point forward, the taxes that were already being generated at that base level continue to go into the general fund of each of the taxing authorities that are providing funding into the CRA fund. But from that point forward, as property values increase over time, hopefully significantly due to the programs in the CRA plan, those taxable increase, the value goes up and up and up over time. That increment is what goes into the tax increment financing fund. And so the city and the county in this instance are the taxing authorities that are going to contribute to the CRA funding. They still get the general revenue from the base level year forward. That doesn't change. And then those increments are what get then deposited into the increment financing fund. A little bit of a nuance there. The city will pay 95% of that increase. The county will pay an equivalent amount of what the city pays, not 95% of what their millage rate would generate. So it's an equal deposit between the city and the county. The purpose of our workshop tonight is for staff to receive direction from the City Commission on the elements that y'all want to see in the CRA plan, and we'll go back and we'll finalize the draft of the plan and bring it back to you on June 14th for final approval or adjustment. And the plan is, if everything goes well, then we'll be presenting the final draft to at the joint City County Commission meeting on June 28th. Just a reminder, this is the boundary of the CRA plan, or the CRA district rather. It actually, oddly enough, it's kind of an odd-shaped district, but it works out to be almost exactly 1 square mile when you measure it all out.
Which means it's 2% of our of our total land mass, because
Right.
people tend to get wrapped up that it is too large, but at 2% of our actual land mass, it's small compared to other CRA districts.
Yes, that's correct. So staff has put together a list of potential work program areas for the CRA for your review. Basically, there's 7 items: infrastructure, economic development, parking, streetscaping. These are fairly typical of what you see in a lot of other CRAs. Some CRAs focus on some very specific projects. Other CRAs are very broad and general in scope. And so ours is going to ideally be much broader in scope so that you can fit more potential projects into the overall umbrella. So starting with infrastructure, and if the commission will indulge me, what I would like to do is I'll go through all of these elements, and then we'll start back at the top, and then we'll take notes on your comments on each individual piece. That way, hopefully, it'll be a little bit quicker to get through for y'all.
And it'll give you a little time to let it process.
So infrastructure can be projects such as street paving or resurfacing. As the finding of necessity pointed out last week, we do have some sections of unpaved streets in the downtown area in the CRA district. There's also some areas that could certainly use for resurfacing improvements. There are a number of areas where we don't have sidewalks on the streets, which, especially when you have long, straight roadways, can be a pedestrian hazard, and so there is potential for the CRA to fund some improvements in neighborhood sidewalks and pathway connectivity for pedestrian traffic safety. Could do infrastructure improvements in support of infill in and potentially affordable housing. One of the things that there's a number of vacant parcels throughout the downtown area And for the most part, as interest in development and infill has increased in the city of Newberry, what we're finding, though, as staff, is that there's a reason they're vacant, and that's usually the lack of access to utilities, either water or especially wastewater. And if the cost to provide water and wastewater is so high that it becomes unfeasible for the private sector to buy those lots and develop on them, CRA funding, in theory, could be used to kind of bridge that gap to encourage the infill. And, or potentially if you had an affordable housing developer that wanted to buy some lots, but for the expense of wastewater or water provision, they would do it, might bridge that gap and encourage that project. So, then, you know, parking, we definitely, like many communities, have a shortage of downtown parking in support of our commercial businesses in the downtown. And so it could potentially fund some paving projects on our dirt lots, could be used for land acquisition for new parking areas. Another area that a lot of CRAs fund is streetscaping projects. It could be signage and wayfinding in terms of having a consistent design where when somebody comes into your community and they see those the different forms of signage, they all kind of blend together in a not necessarily uniform, but a cohesive design patterns. People know that they're there. They know that they're in Newberry. You know, that says Newberry. It helps create a sense of place and makes people understand when they see those signs, you know, that they're directional signage or it's, you know, something the city is put up. Give you some examples. You know, you can have multiple types of signs, but they all have a general feel. It could be in the design, it could be in the coloration, you know, different things. Parks are green, downtown's brown or a different color. And so, but it's that you can look at it and you know immediately that, you know, the place that you're in. It has that cohesive feel. And you can do some additional signage or monuments to let people know when they enter the downtown or when they enter the historic district. It could also fund improvements to our sidewalks and pedestrian walkways, improve the pedestrian-friendly portion of the pathways that are already there. Now, the FDOT project, the One Way Paris project, is obviously going to make a big difference in downtown. They're going to do a lot of that we'd like to see now. But the CRA funds potentially could be used, once that project's done, down the road, it could be used to kind of finish off the things they didn't do for us, fill in that gap. Because pedestrian and friendly pathways and sidewalks are an important element of supporting downtown businesses because it draws people in, it makes people feel comfortable when they're shopping in your downtown. And same with landscaping, vegetation. You know, it could help fund street planter, flower planters, new shade tree or street trees rather, more appropriate street trees than we have right now maybe. And so there's a lot of things could be used for that. And then another thing that could do, it could maybe not fund the murals because murals tend to be fairly expensive, but it could maybe launch a program for mural development in downtown. Murals are a big deal for historic downtown areas. Some of y'all may be familiar with Lake Placid down south central Florida. This is one of their murals that they've got. They went all in on murals. It's like their big tourist draw. But some of them are really cool. They have they're the Caladium capital of the world. They say that they're the Caladium capital of the world, and so this one, you know, pays homage to the Caladium farmers in the area. This one is you know, paying tribute to the citrus industry that's big in the area. Uses an existing doorway as part of the mural. They get really creative, and it. Yeah, this again, you know, pays tribute to the rail industry and the founder of the community. So there's all kinds of different ways that murals help. Again, they create that sense of place. They attract people into your community and get people talking. Economic development. A lot of the similar things that you all hear about about economic development in the city as a whole. Can provide some funding for marketing. It can provide some money for incentives. You know, one of the things that are very popular with CRAs for downtown redevelopment are facade grants or low to no interest loans. Got a couple of examples of those. Those can really make a big difference in the appearance of a building, in the attractiveness of the downtown as a whole. These are from Toccoa, Georgia, not too far away, and this one's from I'm not sure exactly where it's from, but you can see just how much more attractive the one on the right is than the one on the left, although it's the same building. Much more historic, district-oriented look and feel for the one on the right. And again, those you may have a business owner that says, well, I would do it, I just can't afford it. Well, maybe a facade grant or a facade, lower no-interest loan would push them over the edge and encourage them to do that. Likewise, you could fund a redevelopment award or recognition program where companies come into that district and redevelop a building or renovate a building, and you could have some kind of recognition program to reward that in the community. Could be tasked with identifying best target properties for either redevelopment or development if they're vacant, and maintain that list in-house and do the marketing to outside brokers and whatnot for those properties, just to aid in the redevelopment of the downtown area. And one of the things we talked about also in the finding of necessity was that there's a lot of small lots in the downtown area along the commercial corridors that don't really make sense for development. Funding in some CRAs is used to purchase those lots, consolidate them into a larger, more usable parcel, and then turn around and sell them back to the private sector for the actual development. And so it can help with those kinds of lot consolidations. Historic preservation. There's a number of things it could do. Some things that came to staff's mind was loans or grants for historic commercial building renovations. A good example of that would be the 1906 farmhouse. Mr. Griffin went in there and probably spent a small fortune renovating that building, and it's generally more expensive on a square foot basis to renovate an existing historic building than it is to just build from scratch. But if we want to encourage that private investment in the renovation and preservation of our old historic buildings, which we don't have that many of, then this could be a way to incentivize that, to somehow add a little extra to make the sting of what it costs to renovate an old historic building a little bit less. Potentially some support for Main Street organization. A lot of the CRAs do that across the state. And then affordable housing. The state actually requires that if you don't have an affordable housing program as part of your CRA program, your CRA plan, that you explain why. But then they don't actually necessarily tell you what kind of an affordable housing program you have to have. And so, you can use some CRA funds potentially to support affordable housing, not necessarily run an entire program. So you could provide funding for matching funds necessary for grants. We could do acquisition of lands, vacant lands, in support of the affordable housing. Staff has talked with non-government organizations, NGOs. We talked with one that if the city donated a parcel, they would build a house on it. They hold the ownership of the land in perpetuity, but then they sell the house to a low to moderate income individual or family. When they sell the house, they can realize some of the profit. There's a limit on it.
We don't need to get too far into
Yeah,
weeds,
but so we could be a partner with that. We wouldn't necessarily have to be the developer of the affordable housing project, but we could support in other ways that
But
project.
basically what you're saying is we have to have something under affordable housing, or we have to have an explanation of why we don't. So
Yes.
this is what we've come up with for under affordable housing. Okay.
Thank you for summarizing it so well. And then, of course, parks, public spaces. There's a huge range of things that potentially could be funded or assisted with CRA funds. Splash park, skate park, farmers market pavilion, rails to trails. I mean, it's there's a long list there, and it may be a small role, it may be a larger role depending on the project that the commission or the CRA board wants to ultimately invest in. And so that's the list of the program areas and the ideas that staff has come up with. And so we'll circle back around now and get back to the original set where we ask the commission, y'all can go item by item and
Okay,
Wait.
so we're gonna talk about infrastructure. Again, just because we talk about it tonight doesn't mean it's gonna happen. There's no promises being made here. Not $1 out of the CRA can be spent without the CRA board voting on it. The CRA board will mirror the city commission. So just as some evenings we end our city commission meeting and then we enter into a board of adjustment meeting, once we have a CRA, some nights we may end our city commission meeting, and then we will enter into a CRA meeting, right? So you guys will be sitting as the Community Redevelopment Agency Board when you make these decisions. Staff will make presentations to you about which of these projects you want to go after, what do you want to fund, what do you don't, and you guys will vote on it at that point in time. So I want to stress, we do not have to get into long, lengthy debates about projects tonight, because tonight is, let's not tie our hands by missing something or forgetting something. And I want to stress to the public, just because it's on the list tonight is no way, shape, guarantee that it's going to be funded. We're creating a wish list of potential things that could happen in the future if we're successful at getting the CRA. So whatever the idea is, no matter how crazy, right, let's throw it out there, let's get it in the list, and that way we have a chance of talking about it later on. And I think that's my second time reiterating that. So let's go through infrastructure with the board. What are some infrastructure? Did you have a slide with the things that you?
Yep.
I thought there were more than street paving.
well, there are. I just
Oh, you want
we're
to
just
take
gonna
us
go one at a time. Item by item or add items as the board sees fit.
Just as a thought, Brian, everything under infrastructure, I'd list them all, because I think what's gonna happen is that I'll say something that would go under infrastructure improvements associated with infill and affordable housing, and you would say, yeah, that's 3 bullets down, Mike, this
Okay.
hold your.
Yeah, I would agree. Put it all up, so we know what we've already come up with, and then we will.
Okay.
Anything beside in infrastructure, I don't see anything in terms of electric there.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that was a question I was going to pose. Seems like our agreement with the county said we couldn't construct new infrastructure on private property.
Mr. Mayor, what the agreement, the interlocal agreement with the county, that's what the city manager is referring to, is our interlocal agreement they approved with us back in 2019, states that we can't provide infrastructure on private property in a specific area, and that's over by the Wynn property that's currently, part of it's currently in development as a residential neighborhood.
So in my experience with 2 CRAs, one in Gainesville and one in Alachua, we did a lot of, it was more utility upsizing. You know, a lot of streets in your downtown area will have a 2-inch galvanized water main, and when we would do a streetscaping project, we would upsize it to an 8-inch water main, which is appropriately sized for that. So I would make sure we speak to water, sewer, and electric infrastructure. We also undergrounded electric in most of the roads that we were doing streetscaping projects on.
If we wanted to really, we wanted to replace, we have very attractive street lights out in downtown. Is that infrastructure, or is that, could we use the CRA money to pay for that? And if we could, do we have to list it here?
That
Is
would be
enhancements?
Mr. Mayor, that'd be more in line with streetscaping, but it could fall under the.
Agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should be.
Any infrastructure, Commissioner Martin?
Is it more beneficial here, Brian, to be as broad as possible or be more as specific as possible? Is question number 1.
Mr. Mayor, I think the strategy staff recommends would be as broad as possible, and yet if there are particular very specific projects the commission wanted, they can be placed in as well. You can do very specific project targets.
So if we just use the terms such as like aesthetically pleasing improvements, is that too catch-all kitchen sink?
I don't think
Term.
so. I think that
Because it could be, I mean, we've got brick planters around our trees, we've got, you know, the lights, we've got the trees, we've got awnings. If I sat here, I'd probably come up with a dozen different things, but those kind of drop in the bucket of aesthetically
Mr. Mayor,
oriented stuff.
as staff kind of envisions it, we think that there's going to be a lot of that taken care of by the one-way pairs project through the downtown area.
Mhm.
This would then supplement the work that FDOT does with taking us to the next level, or finishing off pieces that they were not able to include in the project scope.
Okay.
So,
Well, the only other, I did have a question, and not a critique by any means, but if affordable housing is meant to be affordable, generally it's smaller, costs less, does that work negatively against improving the value for which the CRA kind of is based on?
Mr. Mayor, the challenge with affordable housing, especially when it's turned over to private owners, is that if you have a rapidly appreciating market, after one cycle, it goes to the next owner, and it's not necessary. It's out of the affordable housing realm then, because of market forces. And so that's where the suggestion that we partner with other NGOs that deal with affordable housing comes in, because they set up the guidelines. You know, we participate in some manner. We maybe provide a lot that we purchase with the CRA funds, and they take care of ensuring that it stays in the hands of affordable housing recipients.
Hang on one sec. Did you have an infrastructure conversation about affordable housing, or were you just skipping ahead to affordable housing?
No, it's right there.
Oh, for the infill affordable. I see that as like us running. We have all these lots that we can't get utilities to, right? So if you see an empty lot in downtown Newberry now, it's probably because our grid system was
Yeah.
laid 100 years ago. I'm
No,
sorry. There's a whole other section about affordable housing. That's why I was asking.
I get that. I'm just, if it's in pursuit of,
Mhm.
it just came to my mind, that's all.
Okay.
I don't really have any other heartache about the other stuff on there. Rails to trails, I'm pretty indifferent about. I think those things can be done under wild spaces, public places, or just straight up cost. But I don't have any heartache on anything else.
And infrastructure, Commissioner Clark, nothing in, you ready to move on to parks and stuff? I think infrastructure is kind of broad.
Is all this staying in it? Is that my question, Mr. Mayor?
That's
This
the
is-
idea.
Okay.
I mean, if there's something that you see and
So
you're
do we
like,
have to specifically, all right, my question would be now then, you got infrastructure, I like everything, and rails and trails would be last to me. But
rails and trails is gonna be over in
Yeah.
parks and,
But the infrastructure's all going to the CRA plan, or what we got right now?
well,
Okay.
Yes. right.
Yeah, but is streets, or what, do we have to wish list streets and paving first out of infrastructure?
No.
Or
And tonight is not a ranking. Tonight's not a ranking.
Yeah.
Tonight is
Okay.
when we think about, and all Brian's trying to do is get us to think categorically,
No, I
one
like-
step at a time.
Yeah.
So,
I read it, but,
And make sure that staff hasn't missed something the commission thinks is important.
yeah.
like electric, right? And I think that there may be some wording there that we want to put in to make sure that we can do electric upgrades as well.
Sewer and water is, Mike mentioned.
Right.
A way I think we should accomplish that is to Commissioner Martin's point, be broad. Utility infrastructure improvements, for example, electric, water, ways. That way it doesn't get so broad that now we get in an argument with somebody in 12 years about what the intention was. It's pretty clear, but it's a for example, so it's not a complete list of everything we might, because who knows, in 10 years, Newberry may be in the natural gas business, and we want
Right.
to provide natural gas service down some of these streets that we're reconstructing.
Yeah,
Plant-
I
planting
think if we
seeds.
phrase it such as, any municipally provided utility service or something along those lines, or it can be drawn up to be broad enough. I think it would include just about.
What about traffic calming
Mhm.
devices? Is that in infrastructure?
Um,
Could we use that to
Resurfacing, street paving,
pay
resurfacing.
for
yeah,
the
could be under
humps
that.
and things like that?
Correct.
I think of the broad specific difference, and we'll see this, I think, really clearly when we get into parks. There's a line in there that says we can use the CRA money to enhance our parks, right? I think that's a nice broad statement. I think it still, even with that statement, would be a stretch to say we're going to build a splash park or a skate park, right? Because those are very, very pointed, specific. So the county may come back to us 20 years and, well, wait a minute, enhanced parks means landscaping, new playground equipment, doesn't mean, right? So that kind of if there's a specific project that some commission 10 years from now may want to do, I think we should pinpoint it and say that way. There is no confusion, there's no debate, right? Other than that, keep it broad. Commissioner Coleman and then Commissioner Mazon.
Well, what about the SCADA system that could we use it for that?
Mr. Mayor, I think as it relates to the, where the SCADA system might be specifically installed, like if there's a lift station in this district and we install SCADA, or some of our electric utilities that have SCADA, and we're upgrading the electric system, absolutely be part of that. I think if we say we want to pay for the SCADA system back in Jamie's office because we might have 1 or 2 transmitters in the CRA district, I think that becomes a stretch. The 4 examples, I think because SCADA system is associated with our water, wastewater, or electric system, if we say water, wastewater, electric system, we would cover all the components within that.
Although, and I apologize, I had it in my notes, but I didn't bring it up. One of the things that we do have to keep in mind, and staff will be checking, once the list is completed tonight, and then we'll go back and check. Anything that's in our CIP, our capital improvements plan, within the last 3 years cannot be included in the CRA plan. So the clear intent from the legislature when they were drawing up the legislation was, well, you can't just shift your burden to the CRA funding for things that you should have been putting in your CRA or your CIP for the community.
What CIP?
It disappeared.
What about flashy pedestrian lights, like right there by Oakview in downtown?
Mr. Mayor, there were certain areas that would be appropriate. Oakview is actually out of the CRA district, but
right here in front of 1906, the kind that lights up when somebody's.
If the FDOT project doesn't yield that for us, that would be something that we could include in the streetscaping enhancements.
And Mr. Planning Director, to an earlier point about further down the list, that's actually on your list, further down the list.
Yeah. So
it's a great idea, by the way.
What about speed bumps? Is that broad?
Speed bumps are not a popular topic.
But it would fall under traffic calming.
It would fall under traffic calming, yes. So.
Okay. Anything else on infrastructure? We're going to add some verbiage there for electric. Broaden that up a little bit. We ready to move on to parking? And if you're watching in the audience, folks, and there's something you think of in one of these, just keep a note of it. We're going to have public comment at the end.
Okay, one more. The farmer's market, would that fall under the category of infrastructure?
Mr. Mayor, also further down the list under recreation.
These are great ideas, by the way. Great ideas.
All right, let's move to parking. Downtown lot paving, land acquisition. Parking seems pretty straightforward. If it's now we've just discussed expanding City Hall and the potential of that being a 2-story building, and at the beginning the bottom being open in a parking lot would, since we've already got a plan for it, too late to slide that into the CRA.
Mr. Mayor, I think it would be questionable to include the new City Hall and
just check.
And if my recollection serves, there are some state laws governing that. The last City Hall project I worked on, certain element of that project were paid out of the CRA. It was broke out in the bid and the landscaping, and certain elements were allowed to be paid out of the CRA. Certain elements were not. They were expressly prohibited. So,
well, I think we should consider it because in the renderings that we've looked at, which are not final renderings, a lot of the concept is making the City Hall compound a very downtown-friendly, walkable area, and there may be public arts, picnic tables, those kinds of things that we want to make sure we could use CRA money to have those kinds of enhancements. So, anything else on parking? All right, let's move on to streetscaping, because this is what we've already jumped into that a little bit here. And sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference between streetscaping and infrastructure, landscaping, vegetation. Would this be the bulbs too, Brian? Like, so if we wanted to bulb out as a traffic calming device and have the little raised curb and gutter, a little bit of landscaping, you bring the sign there, does that help pay for those kinds of things?
I definitely think it could. It'd be working it out with FDOT if we were trying to do that on the main drag, or if it's in between the roads that we control, that we own. Certainly, it could be part of that as an enhancement to the
Enhanced
pedestrian
crosswalk.
safety and.
And in my experience, we've got that about 3 ways. Bulbs are part of just street construction, repaving, resurfacing. It's just a component of that. You've got it also in sidewalks and pedestrian-friendly pathways, traffic calming. So there's about 6 ways that we've identified that. I think that the commission, commission decides they want those elements in their CRA, we could easily justify it.
Commissioner Coleman, you look like you got it. Commissioner Martin?
I don't have any heartache with anything on there. I think those are all good inclusions.
Mr. Plan Director, I recommend that you just add the term hardscaping. Hardscaping is its own element that you would see in streetscaping. It's things potentially benches, park benches, trash receptacles, the planters that one of our commissioners pointed out. That's all within that element, and I think it would cover a lot of things, amenities that someone may want on their streets.
Anything else for streetscaping? I mean, I think, and if you've watched the conversations between other municipalities and the BOCC when it comes to CRAs, a lot of times that they have arguments is a city will put in a lighted crosswalk where you step into it and it lights up, and that's $125,000. And whoa, wait a minute, that you said enhanced crosswalks. That just means you painted it, right? Those kinds of things. So, but I think I agree with the manager that when it comes to bulbs, and I think we got about 3 different ways we can argue that these calming devices should be part of it. I'm not saying we should have a crosswalk that lights up, although it'd be pretty cool. But if no one else can think of anything here, we'll move on to economic developments. And in my mind, all of these things are economic development because they're making them more attractive downtown, right? Commissioner Martin?
The only thing I wrote down was efforting to try to work on tangible things, but I do have a little bit of appetite for the facade upgrade loans. And in that angle, do we know by any chance if we can lien a property
If they don't pay it back.
if they don't pay it back?
Mr. Mayor, there's a fairly wide range of how you can go about it. If it's a grant, obviously it's free money. It can start as a loan, and if the business operates for so many years, then it can be forgiven. It can act as what they call a silent second mortgage or something like that. So there's a number of ways that you could address it, or it can be a straight loan with minor to little to no interest. It really depends how the commission, as the board for the CRA, decides they want that specific program to operate.
From a clawback perspective, though, if someone doesn't
Yes,
comply, then
it would be
there'd be a contractual.
Yeah.
We'd have a contract. Anybody that received it would have its own little contract, and whatever the terms of that, in terms of how we seek
Redress.
thank you. Then we would just follow the document.
Okay. The only other thing that I wrote down was in the lot consolidation bullet. If that is attractive, why? What are the challenges or hurdles from that being done privately by an individual?
It might be a matter that somebody's willing to work with the city, but not necessarily a developer. It might be the city can take it and put it through the process if it needs rezoning, if it needs some kind of other land use work. Again, it's
I think
something
Brian,
that-
can I just jump, because I have the same, I don't know that we'll ever engage in this, but I do know that in the past 2 years, we've had people that just, developers, not on the seller side, but developers, I don't want to deal with 12 people. right? I'm not gonna deal with that. So if the CRA wants to go and deal with the 12 people and put them all together and then turn it, then I'll deal with one person, but I'm not gonna track down 12 different property owners, I'm not gonna negotiate with 12 different people. So it's more of I don't think we would say, well, we're gonna negotiate with each person for you. It would be a developer saying, you know, that's just too much work. I mean, I just had a meeting with a developer who said the rest of the county is dead for that very reason. That the only way you can have a big parcel development is by piecing a whole bunch of small ones together, and it's the on-the-ground time of doing that is not worth their time, but it might be worth our time at some point in the future.
Yeah, to the mayor's point, there've been opportunities in the past where, say for instance, CVS was looking at Newberry, and where they wanted to go was under the 5 separate parcel ownership. And they're not going to negotiate individually with each one. They are only going to go into a situation where there's either unified ownership or there's an existing sale agreement in place. And so the CRA could be that bridge again where they go to all of the property owners, work out the details, and get them all into a sales agreement. Then it becomes a saleable property for a larger use that is then willing to come in and work with them.
Is that it, Commissioner Martin? Another?
Well, just to reiterate my intent, kind of like when we were talking about wild spaces, public places, working on things that are tangible, one-time expenses, and that's a kind of a theme probably throughout for me. So the marketing, I probably wouldn't include that for myself, but the other stuff I think is probably fine. And I like what you're saying about the lot consolidations. That does make some sense.
Other economic development ideas? I had one. I don't know that economic development is the right place. I don't know that CRA is the right place, but Newberry got a tremendous amount of traffic this last Christmas. We had people come from I mean, from hours away, came up for the lighting ceremony, for, we did the reindeer. I got a lot of messages from surrounding municipalities that they came to go. Remember, we put a map out of all the people who were participating in the Christmas light contest, and just having a map and being able to drive around. And it certainly seems like the CRA is, one of the intent of CRA is to get people to come to your town. And if we had some sort of, more pointed Christmas light activity that brought people here, that would potentially be under economic development. It also could be under, or it's really under parks either, but it may be an appropriate thing for the CRA. I'm not sure. It just came to me while we were sitting here chit-chatting about that type of thing. Commissioner Martin?
Well, maybe it's something that we can kind of categorize as like a marquee event, celebration or something. I mean, at this point, Alachua is known for July 4th.
Right.
I mean, they really are. So I don't know if we can.
It's the kind of thing
If
I
we can
think
paint
of when
that
you say
as
marketing. I think of that kind of thing. You're
Yeah, and
marketing
I mean,
Newberry as a Christmas-friendly city,
well, and then I think of stuff like radio, spending money for radio ads that are otherwise not really as tangible as getting reindeer,
Right.
or getting a snow machine, or renting a skating rink or something
Right.
like that. So.
Well, I mean, you have any thoughts, Brian, Mike? Is that an appropriate thing? Marketing your city as a destination locale for holidays, that kind of a thing?
It's
Is
certainly a
that-
possibility. That might be an area where the CRA partners with Main Street to do those kinds of enhancements, the actual Christmas lighting enhancements or something like that, or provides funds for some of the lighting and special events and things.
Sorry
Go ahead.
sorry to monopolize, but it's something like if we actually focused on having a marquee thing like Christmas, great thing about that is that it stretches a lot longer. It's not a one day.
Right.
I mean, maybe the reindeer rental perhaps is a one day, but lights being up, decorations being up, creating the Hallmark feel certainly captures a whole lot more time than just a July 4th fireworks deal.
The Christmas light contest, I did it in my spare time. I mean, it wasn't, there wasn't, and if we got these guys on it, it would have been a whole lot better than my little map that, I had drawn circles around, it would have looked pretty professional. But people loved it. I mean, they took time to message me and say, that was really cool. And it gives you a whole, it gives you an extended period of time. So.
Christmas lights, Santa's here.
Commissioner Maison.
I like the idea that you have. So, going with the expansion of how Christmas is, I love lights. Christmas is my favorite holiday. So, what about something like the Advent calendar? How Alachua has the 4th of July deal. Maybe Newberry could be known for, like you said, the Christmas expansion. Maybe the first day, the second day, do the countdown. But with the countdowns, you have lights, kind of collaborating on this. You have lights in certain areas that light up on those days, and people look forward to those every year.
Yeah, I think, the question tonight is how would we phrase it to get it in there? I mean, I would love to see, lights strung across Newberry Road during the holiday season. That would be kind of expensive to get them anchored. We have to work with the business to anchor them in and be able to hang them up. But those kind of, that kind of thing that really gives people, when they drive into Newberry, they get, boy, this town is celebrating Christmas, and I want to come eat dinner here. And then, we did the Christmas tree park, and people, would get, now we got Joel's, they get coffee, they just walk down and sit in amongst the Christmas trees. Their kids would run around and play. I mean, that's the kind of thing that over time people will come out from Gainesville to come to a restaurant out here during Christmas just so they can have that Hallmark feel.
How about simply special events? I mean, there are special events within the district, so if the commission, the CRA board says, we want the CRA to fund a little bit of our Christmas this year, because most of our Christmas happens within the district. And if they say, well, we want them to fund, $5,000 a year for Westfest, because that also happens in the district. I think, just saying special events gives you the broadness to do all that.
And I would want to echo Commissioner Martin, because through this whole CRA development, we've talked about the facade grants. When people talk to us about, plants growing out of buildings down here and how come no one's painting and why can't the city do this? Well, all of these buildings are privately owned, so it's up to the owner. But if we had a facade grant, a low to no interest loan, we could put some stipulations. You get this no interest loan, but you got to pick a color scheme that matches a downtown feel, so that it all sort of goes together. You got to let us hook our lights up so we can go swim across the road.
It's part of every facade grant is installing electrical to
Installing
support the
electrical
lights.
to support Christmas lights. Commissioner Clark.
What is the anticipated amount of money we're gonna have annually to do anything?
Well, that'll be another question about whether you want to do it annually or whether you want to leverage it. I think it's somewhere around $2 million is our anticipated, maybe a little bit north of that. It all depends on growth rates and property values. Is that in the ballpark?
I think Brian probably knows the best number.
Mr. Mayor, I think the last time we looked at it, it's actually been a little while, we haven't updated it in a bit, but I think you're somewhere in the ballpark. Over the course of 20 years, it was estimated to be somewhere around $2 million.
2 million over 20 years.
Over 20 years, yes, sir.
Right.
So if development takes off much faster than we did, that was based on, I think, an average of 1.5% growth average across those 20 years. It was pretty conservative.
And, Mr. Mayor, the last CRA I worked in was bringing in right around $750,000 a year in revenue. So, but it started the same place this one would. So, but 20 years in, it was bringing in $750,000 a year, and that CRA board had put about $250,000 a year into debt service to to take on a big project, and the rest was spent over all these things that we're talking about, programs and activities, things like that.
One of the first decisions the CRA board will have to make is, do we want to sit on this for a few years and let it build up? Do we want to leverage some and kickstart it? Because if you have something that brings in, then your time grows, right? Because with the whole idea of the CRA is we get a CRA and then some big development happens that really blows all these numbers out, and now you're making, double the money that you projected. So if you can do something that helps assist that early on, then you get you get a better 20-year life cycle out of your time. So but again, we'll have a whole separate workshop just on the pros and cons and risks and rewards of that kind of thing. Anything else on economic development? Other ideas? Let's move on to historic preservation. And I find this one, oh man, if we could have got this done a year ago with our conversation about the electric plant and the cold storage, we could be having a whole lot of other conversations. Okay? Put them all up there.
Actually, the staff only came up with a couple for historic preservation, but again, perhaps a loan or grant program to incentivize the preservation and restoration of historic structures in the downtown. We don't have a lot. We thought we were going to lose cold storage. Now it looks like there's a chance we may save it and turn it into something really cool and productive in the downtown. That's kind of the idea is if private sector is not coming in because it's just too expensive to redevelop that historic structure and maintain it, the CRA potentially at least could bridge that gap and say, well, in order to preserve this building, we'll loan you X dollars at zero interest or very, very low interest. That kind of thing to encourage that, because as we talked about already, it's more expensive to renovate on a square foot basis than an older structure, especially a historic structure, than it is to just build new. And so to incentivize them not to go greenfield and build on vacant land out of the district, this would be a potential program that could incentivize them to come into the district.
Is it legal for the city to use CRA money to renovate our own historic buildings?
Mr. Mayor, I'd have to confirm that.
If we're turning it into a draw.
I think it is if it's, for instance, if you were going to,
The electric plant is.
if you were going to renovate the interior of your city hall, for instance, probably
Right.
not. But if you're going, say, if the municipal building needed some work and it's something that draws people into downtown, or the power plant, or
We want to
something
turn the
like
power
that,
plant into a museum.
that I believe is
Would be-
allowable under the statutes.
Okay.
We'll confirm
Do
that.
we have to
but-
change anything in what you, because loans and grants, I think of the city loaning someone else money. What if it's the city's historic building? Do we have to change anything in that? We loan ourselves money out of the CRA?
If
Can the city be the applicant?
I believe so, but
That's what got the city of Gainesville in so
even
much
though
trouble.
it's city funds, it still would have to be paid back just like any other business would pay
Right.
back. So,
Yeah, we're kind of, but the commission would serve as the applicant and the decision maker in that
Yeah.
process, so. That probably might get us in the weeds, but. We'll specifically.
yeah.
Find out. I would think that the way to handle that, if it's a gray area, is that we specifically identify the historic buildings that we would renovate, and that gives the VOCC a chance to object at our joint meeting and say, wait a minute, and that way, if they don't object, we can say, hey, we told you in the plan. Go ahead, Commissioner Martin.
If it's a publicly owned building, there isn't a taxable appreciation factor in there either,
That's a good point.
so.
Okay, any other historic preservation? We got 2 more sections, and then we'll open it up to public comment. I think most folks are here to talk about public parks and spaces anyway, so let's do affordable housing quickly. And again, I think this is the most dangerous one that's gonna get us down into weeds. So, I guess we could nix this and just put an explanation of why we're not going to. I think Brian has come up with some good ways. I mean, I kinda like the matching funds for grants, that kind of, I think that's broad. And I think the ability for us to partner with other organizations, doesn't mean we will or we won't. When I think about the affordable housing, I'm back into the infrastructure of, we got all these infill lots that are vacant because it would be $100,000 to run the sewer there because we didn't really plan that out very well 85 years ago, 100 years ago. And so no developer can build a house there because they're in at $100,000 before they've done anything else. But these are sort of broad, general categories. Anybody have any other? All right, well, let's move on to parks and public spaces. And then we'll get to public comment. All right, so there's where we got the rails and trails, farmers market, splash park. Folks, just let me reiterate one more time, just because it's in the list doesn't mean that it's gonna happen. We just want to identify it as a possibility. And you guys, we all just heard that we're expecting about 2 million. I think Gainesville Skates Park was a little over 1 million. So, I think a skate park's a great idea. We can always downsize a little bit, but Splash Park, we've gone down that road a lot. They're pretty expensive. So when we think about these things, we're thinking sort of how big of a chunk are we going to take out for each one. But I'm not opposed at all to putting it in here. Again, better to be in and not move forward than to decide, I wish we really had put that in. Anything else? Inclusive playground equipment. We got a lot of new folks coming, a lot of kids with disabilities and things.
Mr. Mayor, unless something changes, every year's $2 million thing, I'm not going to do nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
These are dreams.
Yeah. Don't forget your mic. but we heard you, yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, at $2 million, we're going to get some infrastructure. We're going to do a couple of these downtown projects, and then that money's going to be gone, unless we get some big development that really infuses the CRA. But, we've worked really hard for a lot less money in the past. So, anything else from the commission, from Parks? Commissioner Mazon?
Okay, so this is where the farmer's market comes into play? All right, because that's huge here in Newberry. So, I mean, maybe, some pit-up structures to make it, maybe some shaded areas, multi-purposes, useful, I mean,
Trucks.
yeah, in that area. I was also thinking like some, like you were mentioning on the playgrounds, like out at Lewis Park, for example, maybe a stage, amphitheater. Yeah.
We have a set of plans for that, by the way.
You
It's
did?
not in the CIP.
And down
It
in
was,
the
it was
CIP.
just a pie in the sky dream.
Yeah,
I don't think it's in the CIP, so
I don't
that means
think
it could go in
Yeah,
here.
so it could go, okay. So, I mean,
Put
I
an
had,
amphitheater in, Brian, put amphitheater.
I did have a skate park.
Yeah.
I love
I did have a
There
skate
it
park.
is, Skate park.
I did have a skate park, maybe making it a little smaller.
And I will say to the skate park, I'm a teacher. I get more people asking me for a skate park than a splash park, by far. Yeah. I mean, I think a skate park, a splash park is gonna be used by little kids in the summertime. A skate park, year-round, little kids, big kids, adults.
To the mayor's point, I live less than a mile away from Possum Creek where they have the Gainesville State Park, or skate park. It is the most used facility I've ever seen. There is daylight to sunset. There's several people skating in there, and it's all ages. So,
And keep in mind, the Newberryans tax dollars to keep up with that splash park versus a skate park.
Skate park, yeah, it's kinda there. Yeah.
And just a thought about, I think that when we get to projects like this, Mr. Mayor, that we will approach them a lot like affordable housing. We will leverage see, if the commission wants to do something like this, we would recommend leveraging CRA dollars with Wild Spaces dollars, or use
USDA.
CRA dollars as a grant, as a match. You know, we can go get 75% funding if we have a 25% match, and the commission may pose, okay, we'll do a 25% match on a skate park, go get that grant.
I got something else. One thing I've noticed is downtown, well, handicap, making it accessible for those guys to come and to venture downtown and enjoy some of the festivities we have there, especially for the.
Would that be under
Streetscaping.
streetscaping and loans to businesses to convert their, because a lot of these historic businesses have a slightly different set of rules when it comes to ADA, once you're so old. But maybe we could, would that already be in streetscaping?
It certainly could be, yeah. It could
Are
be
you talking
part of
about our part, or are you talking about the business part of getting folks in wheelchairs into the businesses? Or
Both.
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 Yeah.
I mean, if they can't get to that stage at the park.
Yeah.
Right. I think for the most part, the city facilities, almost all of them are accessible already, because we have to be. To the mayor's point, the businesses in historic structures, they do operate under a different set of rules. It gives them some leeway, because it can be extremely expensive to meet ADA compliance on an old historic structure. But it's something that we could certainly include as an option to help encourage that.
Commissioner Martin?
I know I had texted either you or Mike or both when we were talking about the City Hall renovations. I thought that maybe we could potentially reach out to Sandvik or one of the farm implementation companies and get some sort of piece of equipment that really speaks to our heritage as almost like a photo feature spot right downtown. And
Public art.
yeah, if you think about like Jackson Hole, if anybody's ever been to that place, everybody takes their picture in front of the arches of all the antlers. I mean, something like that I think would be really wild, and they probably would donate a significant portion of it. Maybe would cost us to get it installed or something, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's got something like that laying around.
Yeah. Piece of mining equipment. Yeah, that's a great idea.
All right. Any other questions from the dais? Comments, thoughts on parks, public spaces? Okay. Good job, Ryan. I think you came in with a very comprehensive list of things I would have never thought of. Good job.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's open the floor to public comment on anything any of those categories, and if you need a refresher on the list, we can put lists, or if everybody's here to talk about public parks and spaces, we'll just leave that list there. And if you'd like to, come on down, state your name, any member of the city, any resident, have 3 minutes to discuss. Come on down, ma'am, introduce yourself. There's a little light up there. As long as it's green, you got 3 minutes ahead of you. When it turns to yellow, you got 30 seconds. And when it turns to red, we'll hear from somebody else.
Okay, this isn't really about your list.
Okay.
This is our wish list. And I
Okay.
want to tell you that
You got to
the
turn
deal-
to the microphone. You got to speak into the mic so the folks, when we're recording it on home. So
the
you
people
talk to me.
behind me,
They're all here for you.
they're all here as a group.
Well, we
Would you
like your
all stand
efficiency.
up that's with-
Well done.
Most of your audience is
right,
here.
Rally the troops.
Well, we appreciate your efficiency of assigning one person to speak. Thank you.
I'm Sally Johnson, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. We have a huge wish list, and I guess it's just a wish list after I hear $2 million. Our first proposal is to have an inside swimming pool. And I won't go on to elaborate, but the buoyancy of the water does reduce impact and stress when exercising. And people that have arthritis osteoarthritis and osteoporosis. This helps them an incredible amount. If you would poll the community, you would find there's many people that are homebound because they can't get out. This swimming pool would help them immensely. Our second proposal would be a senior citizen center. Now, Gainesville has a beautiful one, and yes, we can go there, but it might as well be on the moon because it's so far away, and you ask these people here, they can't get there. We need a place to go. We had a place, and I'll jump right into this, and this is something that you can do for us now. Our final request, it can happen now. Maybe we're a little bit in our pie in the sky or whatever on the other two, but before COVID hit, we were playing bingo, doing arts and crafts, and enjoying each other's company down here at City Hall. When it hit, then they closed it down. Elder Care canceled their program, and it was food deliveries only at the Martin Luther King program, and still is. People are lonely, they're unhappy. They're here tonight to show you that they want a place to go. We're asking you to please open up something for us. Governor DeSantis has signed an executive order to suspend all outstanding local COVID-19 and related public health restrictions. There's no reason why we can't get together now. I called Elder Care today. They are not opening it up again for us.
Ms. Johnson, is everyone here letting Ms. Johnson speak for you? If that's the case, I'm going to give her a little bit of extra time. If other people want to speak, okay, then we'll give her a couple more minutes to finish that thought.
So I'm just saying that we need a place to go. We're asking you to give us our fun back. We need to reduce stress and ward off anxiety, depression, and help reduce the risk of illness. Think the other spectrum, the elderly. There's a lot of people in need right now. You all are going to be elderly soon.
I'm already kind of feeling that.
So we're asking you as our community leaders to please help us find a better quality of life.
Thank you, ma'am.
Does anybody else want to?
Hang on one second, because I believe, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that we have started, or we are very soon to start the bingo program up again at the MLK
Correct.
Center. So those programs are slated to come back online.
Well, that's good, but we were doing arts and crafts. We were
can do
doing
that
a
at
lot
MLK,
of,
yeah. All of those
all
programs.
that's coming back.
All's coming back.
Okay,
All
that's
is
good.
coming back.
All of our,
So
We're gonna
maybe-
hold you to
Do
it.
we have a timeline, Mike? Do we know from Travis when that's gonna happen? I thought it had
I'd-
already started, actually.
I don't know exactly, but we can start those up in a week or two. I mean, if they're not started up,
You see how anxious they are to get back
I mean,
together?
I'm unfortunately, I don't know or necessarily communicate with you guys, but I do communicate with our team about it quite a bit, and
Good.
the impression I get is they've been ready to go for some time.
Where is this gonna happen?
The Martin Luther King, it's
more
actually
of a
more
community center.
geared for these types of events. It's
It's a big industrial
about
kitchen.
that's right, it's about 6 blocks north of here.
I've been there.
The MLK Center, and we have a lot of afternoon traffic, but from during the morning hours up to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it is essentially a ghost town, and we are trying to get more activity going on in that facility because that's what the commission made a big investment in some time ago, and we're trying to get full utilization out of the building.
Okay.
We have a really dynamic employee that's stationed over there.
Yeah, Latasha, and she ran all the senior
most of the
programming.
time. And I talked with her a month ago, and she was just busting with ideas for when we got back together, the senior programs and bingo and other arts and crafts and things that we're going to do, and cooking classes. We got a big industrial kitchen over there, yoga. So if those programs haven't started, they're right around the corner. And I would encourage you, Janine, is there the table with the sign-up sheet back there? Well, maybe it's over there. If we can just make sure that.
Well, Sally certainly knows how to call me.
Yeah. If you are not, I think we all have Miss Johnson on Facebook. So if you're not in contact with us, make sure you leave your name and number back there, and we'll make sure we get contacted with you, and we'll let you know when those
Okay.
programs are going, and we'll make them
Well,
announce.
that will certainly help us.
Yes. All right. Thank you, man. We appreciate you coming. Commissioner Martin, did you have anything to add to any of that? Okay. Are there any other comments about any of the other categories that we talked about tonight? Any ideas, things that we should put on there? If not, we're going to move to comments, and maybe we'll all catch the end of the state first round of the state baseball game. So keep that in mind, Mr. Manager, and you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no comments.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
No comments, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Coleman, welcome back one more time.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the prayers, and things are going really good now, and hope not to miss any more meetings.
Awesome. Well, we want you back.
All right.
Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Maison? And I have nothing as well, so everybody could go to...
Got a score?
I do not. I'm about to go to the Stone House and see if it's still on. Still on. Public comment. Anybody else want to come back up? Think it's something on? Come on down. Hey, he's incognito. Kids watching.
For the,
Yeah.
for those of you that don't know me, the name actually is Arthur Bear. There's an awful lot of people around the neighborhood here that know me as Santa Claus. I've been, Arthur Bear, and I have actually been the Santa Claus in the Newberry parade, I think
Yeah.
for 6 or 7 out of the last 6 or 7 years. I enjoy doing that. I was the Santa Claus for High Springs. They did not necessarily think that they knew who I was, so they didn't want me, basically. I want to also let you know that I am part of the elder care program. Matter of fact, I don't know, a lot of you may have already known, Mrs. Meese, Evelyn Meese, was the person that was running the meal site over here for elder care. She passed away about a year ago. And as she passed away, I kind of picked it up, and I've been running with it for the last year. I do have a couple of questions or thoughts or whatever you want to call them. I've been over here to the Martin Luther King building for as long as we've been over there. And before that, we were over here to this building. I know now that there's been a new lock put on that door over there for the Martin Luther King building. And I know and I understand that the city wants to maintain the building. There is one day out of the week that there's nobody over there from Newberry. Now, I'm a senior citizen, my wife is a senior citizen, and we both go over there and serve the meals on Friday. We do Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Excuse me. On Fridays, there is no access that I know of because I've been told that the new bathrooms have been locked down in the playground over there. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I was told. But other than that, there's no facilities for us to be able to use any kind of a bathroom. I can't even get in. I've asked several times. I've asked Latasha. I've asked her several times if there's any way I could get a combination or the door to get in. And she just basically passes me off. She doesn't say anything. I've tried to get a hold of Travis Parker, and I haven't gotten any response out of him. I have gotten a hold of Mr. Jeff Lee out of Elder Care, and I will say, and I do have to admit, that he did try to get me a combination for the door, but the combination doesn't work.
That's that's an operational thing, so the manager's been taking down these notes. If you will make sure that he has a way to contact you,
I'll do
we'll
that.
follow up and we'll figure out what's going on.
Okay.
All of these facilities have to be secured at some point.
I
and have to be
understand
open
that.
at
I
some
understand
point, but
that.
We want to make sure they're available for programs that the community is utilizing, so.
If I can ask
we
one
appreciate you.
more question, my wife and I came in late. What is CRA?
Community Redevelopment Agency.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Thank you for your time,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Any others? Hang on one second, man. Let me make sure if there's anyone else, because your comment was under the item, but you will have to come back to the podium. Anybody else want to make a comment? Come on down, Ms. Johnson.
I don't know how you're gonna do this.
Ms. Johnson. Yeah, just say your name again, I'm sorry.
Sally Johnson. I don't know how we could do this, but I really believe there needs to be the list of a lot of these people. They didn't know a lot of things that were going on. They didn't know that it was going to open up. Is there any way we can get a list put together that you can notify them?
That's what I asked you last time you were up, if you would make sure everybody who's not getting notifications, leave your name and number. We'll have a sheet of paper out of the
Okay.
table. Ms. Janine's holding it up right now.
Okay.
And we'll
Okay.
get an email sent out to you. If I could figure out a way to communicate with everybody in town, it would be amazing, because I don't know, after 10 years of people standing up there, and I'm out there screaming it from the rooftops, and still people say, well, I didn't know anything about it. So if I could answer that question, boy, I could make a lot of money. But make sure if you're not getting notifications, leave your name and number
Okay.
and an email back there,
Okay.
and we'll see what we can do
All right.
about it.
Thank
All
you.
right? Any other public comments? If not, hearing none, we are adjourned. Anybody see the score?